Okay, right.
Right. Good evening, and my name's Adam Chelton, here to stop the stigma. Now, I'm doing a little bit different tonight. I'm going to talk about, because it's Awareness Week, for something which I've never heard of until, a couple of days ago, lupus. Now, obviously, we are going to discuss what it is, how it affects people on day-to-day life, and goes from there. Now, I'm joined by the brilliant Karen McEwen. Now, obviously, I have got a website, and I'm just going to read her bio as we speak. Hang on a minute. Obviously, I can't minimise this while I'm recording, but so I'm going to hand it over to Karen so she can explain who she is.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Karen.
Well, very good of you to have me, Adam, to talk about lupus.
Yeah. So please tell us about who you are and what you do to raise awareness for lupus.
Well, I spent a successful career in the city, and then I retrained as a psychotherapist. And I was working with severely disabled young people and for two leading mental health charities. And I was emergency admitted to hospital with a life-threatening fever. And whilst I was there, I was diagnosed with severe systemic lupus, an incredibly long name, and I'd never really heard of it. I'd vaguely heard of something called lupus, but that was it. I had what was described as a top 2 percentile flare in lupus, which meant that in the subsequent weeks, I lost a whole load of weight and ended up 6 stone, 84 pounds, and in a wheelchair, and too weak to lift a kettle. I was fading fast, as my consultant put it. So that was in 2012, and I spent 6 years in chronic pain and battled my way back. Now, unfortunately, lupus is currently incurable, so I still, deal with the disease. But I now, as a psychotherapist, I treat people all through the UK and around the world for lupus as a providing answers and also providing emotional and mental support for what is a very challenging, very difficult illness.
You know what? If I had a hat on, I'd take it off to you. Big respect to you for actually, obviously I can't say making a massive recovery, but doing what you do, even though you're still experiencing what you did in 2012. I'm proud of you for actually sitting here today and telling your story.
Well, thank you very much. I spent 8 years researching it because when I first started, I thought, oh, I'll be able to go somewhere and it'll tell me all about it. And I realized that there is information, but it's scattered all over the place. Yeah. And it's very difficult to go to one place and get, the reassurance and the information that you need. And that's what I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, before we came on, you gave a figure that 5 million people live with lupus, and majority of them being females. So obviously, this is why I thought, what better than a bloke hosting this to speak about lupus.
Well, I have actually treated a gentleman, two gentlemen with lupus. Still absolutely devastating, professional people who've had to give up work and take early retirement because of it. And also to have had contributors to my book who were male. But 90% is female between the ages of 50 and 55 is when they get diagnosed. Yeah,
Wow.
and there's also, as I think we discussed, there's also an ethnic element to it, which is that if you are Black American, Hispanic, or Asian, you're more likely to get it. There's a higher percentage of their populations that get lupus, and they may get it more severely. So it's very, very important to raise awareness of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because like I said before I came on, I have never heard of it in my entire life, and I'm coming up to 30 years old, and not once have I ever heard of it. So I'm
Yeah.
glad to actually come up with these new names, of hearing them and actually raising awareness for them. So obviously, it's like, why is things like this being ignored from like the governments?
What I think lupus is, the thing about lupus is it's quite complicated. It has about 11 official symptoms, of which you have to have 4 in order to be diagnosed. And some of those are some complicated blood tests. So that complicates things. But it's got a massively high wrong and misdiagnosis rate. So they did a study in 2017 in the States of nearly over 3,000 people, and 41% of them had been diagnosed with something else before they finally got diagnosed with lupus. And the average time for being diagnosed successfully in the UK is 6.4 years.
Wow.
So
Wow.
an awful lot of people spend a lot of time, you know, going to the doctor and saying, I'm in terrible pain and whatever. And because it's not so up the radar, it seems to be repeatedly diagnosed. And worse than that, people are disbelieved and told that they're making it up, or they're imagining it, or they're depressed, which annoys me dreadfully, because you know, I specialize in treating people who are depressed, and to find that being misdiagnosed when people are in real pain and really suffering is extremely annoying.
Yeah,
So
I totally believe you. Yes, because I know how it feels to be ignored. Like, obviously, I've got dyspraxia, and I know how it feels to be ignored, because I know that's not being spoken about enough. So I can sympathise with what you're saying between dyspraxia and lupus. I know there's no connection, but I know how it feels to actually be ignored, and as the saying goes, falling through the cracks, if you get me.
absolutely.
Yeah. So obviously we need to find out, how can we actually start raising awareness, and what action can we take into making not just the NHS and doctors and stuff like that, but also the government to take action on this and get this sorted.
Yeah, it was one of the reasons I wrote my book, was because I just wanted a sort of an entry-level manual, if you like, as to all the basics, so that it was a one-stop shop. There is a doctor that's written a massive tome about absolutely everything, but I wanted to make something a bit more accessible, you know? Because I find that on the forums, the same questions come up again and again and again and again. People ask exactly the same questions, and so I wanted to do that. But it's more prevalent than leukemia, cystic fibrosis, multiple sclerosis, and muscular dystrophy combined. There's more people with lupus than those. That's the ones that are being diagnosed. And yet the profile, as you have rightly identified, is nowhere near that.
No, it's not.
There's probably at least a third more people who've got lupus, who are walking around with it, who haven't been diagnosed.
Yeah, and what makes it even harder is, if they do live with lupus, due to this pandemic, there's virtually nothing they can do.
No, well, I've been sheltering for 5 months. I'm in the 2.2 very vulnerable. So I you can't get it with lupus. It's really, as my rheumatologist says, you really don't want this, Karen.
Yeah.
So
Going back to your book, what's it called again, and where can we find it?
it's called How to Stay Sane in Pain, Clarity, Resilience and Calm with Lupus, and it's on Amazon. It's in
Brilliant.
hardback, paperback, and it's very cheap in ebook format on Amazon. You've got a look
Fantastic.
inside function, you can have a look at. So yeah,
Fantastic.
and it's got a wolf. It's got a wolf on the front, which is because lupus is the Latin for wolf.
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so basically right back in 1170, an Italian doctor called Frugadi said that the distinctive facial rash that you get with lupus was like somebody had been bitten in the face by a wolf. And because he spoke Latin was the learned language, lupus is Latin for wolf. So that's why it was called lupus.
Right. See, we learn something new every day.
Yeah, cool, isn't it? And I mean, when I first sat in the hospital bed, I had no idea. I had no idea at all.
Yeah, well, glad you've got full knowledge of it, and glad you're not just teaching me, but people that actually tune into this stream afterwards. A lot to take in, and people would be thinking, right, I need to go on Google to see if I've got these symptoms. That's
Yes,
probably
well,
what they'll do.
I spend a lot of time telling people about the basic symptoms. There's 11 core symptoms, and then there are about 20 symptoms which are absolutely indicative of lupus, which doctors will tell you sometimes they're not, but I know that they're all indicative if you've traced them down. So people come up with losing their hair, for example, or problems with their teeth, or particular rashes. These are all absolute hallmarks of lupus.
I was going to ask you to share some of the symptoms of lupus, but obviously you've just beat me to it.
Well, the two main ones, Adam, the two main ones are 90% of people, 95% of people have pain, really bad pain. In fact, the pain can get so bad that I heard a story about a naval officer who kept going to her doctor saying she was in pain, but he didn't treat it. He treated her for depression because he said it was in her head, and it got worse and worse. So she ended up in A&E with meningitis. They thought she had meningitis. She was in that much pain, and all her limbs were swollen, and she had rashes. So swollen limbs, pain, rashes, absolutely distinctive. And the other one is fatigue. 90% of people have fatigue.
Yeah.
But and one of the leading, Dr. Michelle Petrie, who is the director of the Johns Hopkins Lupus Center in the States, which is like one of the leading ones, she said our patients have pain and fatigue like cannot be described. It can be really bad. Yeah.
So obviously, where can people find you if they want to like get in touch? Because I know I found you on LinkedIn. I know there's a website.
Yes, I've got a website, and also I've just launched a group on Facebook called the Lupus Bounce Back Club, which is a private club, but I try and give lots of information on that as well, rather than just some of the forums, because some of the forums just have the same questions going round and round and round. And I thought, I've got to launch something where I just answer it straight off.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And say, look, if you've got problems with your teeth, or you've got this kind of a rash, yeah, that is distinctive, rather than people thinking, well, is it or isn't it, or which is awful. It's awful. I'd hate being that confused. As much as anything, it's really important. I think you would share this. It's really important that people don't feel alone, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. If people ever feel alone, don't. There's always people there. And like I keep saying in my videos, when Boris Johnson or any of these people say social distance, don't listen to it, because since March I have felt, yeah, I've had tough days. I can admit that I have been depressed, but I've never felt so social connected in my life with the amount of people all over the world I've connected with. Like, I don't know where you're from, Karen. I'm afraid.
I was born in Oxford, hence the nice clear-cut English accent. That's my Oxford accent.
Yeah,
And I live in rural Hampshire.
Hampshire. Wow.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
you
I
go.
like trees, and I have dogs, so that's important to me. I think it's really important to have a restful space if you're fighting a chronic illness.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Now, is there any like merchandise people can actually buy in awareness? Like, I don't know, t-shirts, wristbands.
Yes, there are one or two charities. The two signs of lupus, one is the wolf, but the other one is a butterfly, because the famous rash, the rash like you've been bitten in the face, it comes down the nose and it spreads across either cheek. It's called a malar rash, after the Latin for mal, for cheekbone. So basically, they call it, but some people describe that as a butterfly rash. So you often see butterflies connected with lupus. I
Yeah,
have to say, personally, I think butterfly is a bit of a sort of nice, pretty symbol for something that's so tough. You
absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
I prefer a wolf, because you being a mental health warrior will appreciate that it's not easy doing something like this.
No.
It's, it takes guts.
Yeah, it does. It does. Obviously, just March last year, I attempted suicide myself due to trauma, but now I bounce back more than ever, and I just raise awareness and encourage people. One word: talk. That's all it
Yes,
is. Just talk.
yes.
You're not alone.
Well, I very often find that when people first come to me as clients, they will just talk. They will just spend, because you're independent, they don't have to worry about hurting my feelings. They don't have to keep it from me. They don't have to be brave or stoical or anything like that. They just talk. And very often I'll turn around and say, we're coming to the end of our session. And they'll say, really? That went quick. Because they're just desperate to download.
No, I've always said when I've come across people myself on Facebook, if you ever need to just talk, cry, or even just rant, drop me a call and I'll be just there to listen.
Yes.
And I don't care how long it takes.
Yeah.
But obviously, like you said, when you came to end the session and they went, what, that quick? Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say that the cornerstone of any practice is listening. It's forensic listening is absolutely crucial.
Yeah,
That's
it
the
is.
absolute cornerstone of what I do. I have a big toolbox of all kinds of, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy, and trauma therapy, and positive visualizations, even breath work. I have a whole big box of stuff, but all of it is rooted in just being there for the client and allowing them to speak.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's what it's all about. Because I always believe when they're talking, the drop in the stigma. It's when there's silence, that's when they're holding it.
That's very, very perceptive. I think that's a wonderful thing to say. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
And you say about crying, I feel privileged. People sometimes say to me, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm crying. And I say, look, you must feel in a safe space. And if you feel safe enough with me to cry, then I regard that as a privilege. So you keep
yeah,
going.
Yeah.
It's really, really important. Some people, as you say, they hold it all in.
They do. They do.
Yeah.
I kept it to myself for 21 years, and I couldn't wait to unload it. I couldn't wait. So
No.
that's what I did, and now
Yeah.
they can't shut me up.
Did you? Yes, probably a huge sense of relief in
Yeah.
finally being able to share.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And same with you. Hands up to you as well for actually speaking now, because you probably held on to it a little bit because you didn't know what to do, who to turn to, what even to look at when you first was diagnosed with lupus.
Completely, and I couldn't hold a book. My hands were so bent, and my arms were so weak. I couldn't hold a book for any length of time. I couldn't hold a newspaper because it was too much. So I got an iPad. I borrowed my husband's work iPad, and I managed to put it over my knees, and I was able to swipe and tap. And that's how I started learning about it and just connecting.
Fantastic. Just something as small as that.
Something, just having, as you said, just a connection and a window on things, because I say that lupus is an emotional and mental boot camp, you know, with no quarter given and nowhere to hide. It really, you know, I think an author turned around and said, there is no tyrant as terrible as pain, and it really does find you, you know, and it messes with your brain as well. If you're in that much of, if you're in constant pain, there's been a lot of modern research now done, which I tell my clients, and I say, look, there's evidence that it messes with your brain. It actually interferes with the working of it, and that's such a relief to them, because they often think that it's them, you know. They often think that they feel guilty, they feel that they've done something wrong somewhere, and that's very often not helped by people around them who sort of tell them to snap out of it and get over it. And, you know, if you're a little bit tougher, I'm sure you'd handle it better.
Yeah.
Somebody was once told, somebody recently was told not to wallow in it. And then she might be better, and she was in terrible pain, and actually being a real Trojan. So
Absolutely.
it's awful. Yeah, it's awful.
So if just last piece, what's one piece of advice would you give someone who's just found out they've actually been diagnosed with lupus?
I would say, get as much help as you can. Don't keep complaining, because that's the important thing. Don't, you know, sit there and suffer in silence. Make sure that you get the help you want. So whether that's health professionals, whether that's alternative health professionals, and also don't feel that you've lost you. You know, you have an illness, you're still there. So, you know, that's really important to remember, that you're still you.
You know what? You're awesome. You really are. And everyone that is listening to this, all warriors. That's how I see them. Everyone I speak to, they're all warriors. I speak to people from, I don't know, UK, Australia, Canada, just everyone. And I love it. I really do.
Now, it's been wonderful about lockdown, isn't it? Everybody's been talking to everybody. Yes, yeah. I've got people now I connect with in New Zealand and Guangzhou in China. It's fabulous.
It is. It's absolutely fantastic, amazing, and I'm glad to add you to the list. From Hampshire.
From Hampshire. Yes, from Hampshire, rural Hampshire. Very beautiful.
Yes. So thanks for coming on. I cannot wait to get this video out there in public. Please share it. Help me share this video.
I will do.
In awareness.
Well, thank you for your incredible work, Ajahn.
No, thank you for actually giving me this opportunity to actually talk about something I've never heard of before.
Yeah. Yeah, very important. I think it's very important.
Yes.
I think it's very important.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. It is.
Because I'm very reserved English. My natural thing is to be very reserved and not sort of thing, but I just decided that I had to get over it and write about it and talk about it
Absolutely.
and teach. Yeah.
Absolutely. And on that note, I will stop this recording now. Thanks for coming on. Really, it's been a
My
pleasure.
pleasure.